The ocean has always been a realm of mystery, a vast and untamed frontier where ships and sailors vanish without a trace, leaving behind only questions and restless legends. Think of the Bermuda Triangle, that infamous stretch of water where compasses spin wildly and vessels disappear into thin air. But what if I told you that long before modern radar or satellites, ancient mariners faced horrors just as unexplainable? For thousands of years, the sea has swallowed entire fleets, legendary explorers, and even civilizations, leaving behind eerie gaps in history that defy logic. These aren't just ghost stories, they're real disappearances, woven into the fabric of our past, waiting to be unraveled. Picture this: a Phoenician trade ship, heavy with gold and spices, vanishes somewhere between Crete and Egypt. No storms, no enemy attacks, just empty waves where a proud vessel once sailed. Or imagine the mighty fleet of Emperor Claudius, hundreds of Roman warships lost in the English Channel, their fate a whispered rumor in dusty scrolls. These aren't isolated incidents. Across millennia, from the Mediterranean to the South China Sea, the same chilling pattern repeats: ships, crews, even whole armadas gone without explanation. And the strangest part, some of these vanishings share uncanny details, as if the sea itself follows a hidden rulebook of chaos. Today, we're diving deep into 25 of history's most haunting maritime mysteries, cases that have baffled scholars, defied science, and sparked legends. You'll hear of Bronze Age seafarers swallowed by rogue waves, of Chinese treasure ships that never returned, of Viking longships lost in fog so thick it felt alive. Some of these stories hint at natural disasters, others suggest something far darker. But one thing ties them all together: the ocean keeps its secrets well. So grab your lantern and steady your nerves, because we're about to chart a course through the most enigmatic disappearances ever recorded, where every wave hides a clue and every shadow could be the answer. The truth is out there if you dare to look. Off the rugged coast of southern Australia, buried beneath shifting sands and whispered tales, lies one of the continent's greatest enigmas, the Mahogany Ship. First spotted in the early 1800s by local whalers, this mysterious vessel was said to be lodged deep in the dunes near Warrnambool, its dark, weathered timbers hinting at an origin far older than any European settlement in the region. Witnesses described a shipwreck unlike any other, its construction resembling the caravels of Portugal or Spain, its wood so dense and rich it earned the name Mahogany Ship from those who stumbled upon it. But here's where the mystery deepens. By the time archaeologists and historians arrived to document it, the dunes had swallowed the wreck whole, as if the sea itself had reclaimed its secret. Theories about the ship's origins spiral like the coastal winds. Some believe it was part of a lost Portuguese expedition from the 1500s, decades before Dutch explorers officially charted Australia's shores. Fragments of maps and cryptic journal entries suggest Portuguese navigators might have reached these waters first, leaving behind this ghostly vessel as their only marker. Others argue it could be a Spanish galleon, blown off course from trade routes that stretched from the Philippines to the Americas. Then there are the skeptics, those who claim the Mahogany Ship was nothing more than a misidentified whale carcass or a timber pile from a later shipwreck, its legend inflated by time and folklore. Yet the disappearances don't end with the ship itself. Over the centuries, countless searches have been mounted to unearth it, each ending in frustration. Expeditions in the 1860s and 1920s found nothing but sand and silence. Even modern technology, ground-penetrating radar, sonar scans, has failed to pinpoint the wreck. It's as if the dunes are guarding their treasure, shifting just enough to confound every effort. Local legends only fuel the intrigue, with stories of strange lights flickering along the shore at night, or the distant sound of creaking timbers when the wind howls just right. What happened to the crew? If this was indeed a Portuguese or Spanish vessel, why no records of its voyage? Were they victims of a sudden storm, mutiny, or something far more sinister? The Mahogany Ship refuses to give up its secrets, leaving us with only whispers and what-ifs. And so the dunes remain, a restless grave for a mystery that may never be solved. The enigma of the Mahogany Ship isn't just a tale of a vanished vessel, it's a ripple through history, challenging everything we thought we knew about who first set foot on Australia's shores. For centuries, textbooks credited Dutch explorer Willem Janszoon as the first European to reach the continent in 1606. But what if the truth is far older? The possibility that Portuguese or Spanish sailors might have arrived decades, even centuries earlier, has sparked fiery debates among historians, with the Mahogany Ship at the center of the storm. Imagine the implications: maps rewritten, timelines upended, and a hidden chapter of maritime history waiting to be uncovered. Modern archaeology hasn't given up on the mystery. Teams armed with magnetometers and ground-penetrating radar have scoured the dunes near Warrnambool, tracing every anomaly beneath the sand. In 2017, researchers uncovered fragments of timber and rigging materials that some argue could belong to the legendary wreck, but without the ship's distinctive hull, the evidence remains tantalizingly out of reach. Skeptics point out that Australia's coastline is littered with shipwrecks from later centuries, and without definitive proof, the Mahogany Ship could simply be one of many. Yet believers counter with intriguing clues: 16th-century Portuguese maps showing a landmass eerily resembling Australia's southern coast, and records of explorers like Cristóvão de Mendonça, whose fleet vanished after sailing into uncharted waters. Could one of his ships have met its fate in those windswept dunes? The debate grows even more intriguing when you consider the stories passed down by the local Gunditjmara people, the traditional custodians of the land. Some oral histories speak of ghost sailors who appeared long before European colonization, their ships battered by storms and their faces unfamiliar. Could these be echoes of the Mahogany Ship's crew, survivors who walked ashore only to disappear into the mists of time? Others dismiss the accounts as folklore, but the persistence of these tales adds another layer to the puzzle. Even the ship's construction fuels speculation. Early descriptions mention a hull built with techniques typical of Iberian shipwrights, using woods like mahogany or teak, materials rarely found in later British or Dutch wrecks. But without the physical evidence, it's all circumstantial. The ocean, it seems, is content to let the mystery linger. Every storm reshapes the dunes, burying and unearthing secrets at whim, as if daring us to solve the riddle. Why does this one shipwreck matter so much? Because it's more than a maritime cold case, it's a key that could unlock a hidden door in history. If the Mahogany Ship is indeed a pre-colonial relic, it rewrites the narrative of global exploration, proving that the age of discovery was far more daring and far more mysterious than we ever imagined. Until that wreck is found, though, the truth remains as elusive as the ship itself, lost in the sands, waiting for the right wave to reveal it. 2,200 years ago, in the twilight of his reign, China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, became obsessed with defying death itself. His conquests had unified warring kingdoms, his terracotta army stood guard for the afterlife, but none of it was enough. He wanted eternal life. Ancient texts speak of a desperate mission. The emperor ordered a vast fleet to sail east beyond the known world, in search of mythical islands where immortals dwelled and elixirs flowed like rivers. The fleet, some say numbering hundreds of ships, vanished without a trace. Not a single vessel returned, not a single plank of wreckage washed ashore. It was as if the ocean had opened its jaws and swallowed them whole. Historical records from the Han Dynasty offer fleeting clues. Scrolls mention Zhu Fu, a cunning court sorcerer who promised Qin Shi Huang the secret to immortality. With the emperor's blessing, Zhu Fu reportedly led the expedition twice. The first attempt failed, but the second, around 210 BC, became legend. Ships laden with craftsmen, scholars, and enough supplies for years at sea disappeared into the mist beyond the Bohai Sea. Some scholars believe they aimed for Mount Pinglai, a fabled paradise floating somewhere in the eastern waters. Others argue the fleet ventured much farther, perhaps even reaching Japan, where local folklore tells of mysterious celestial visitors arriving around the same time. Yet the lack of physical evidence is deafening. For centuries, treasure hunters and archaeologists have scoured the coasts of China, Korea, and Japan, searching for any sign of Xu Fu's armada. The absence of wreckage is baffling. If the ships sank in a storm, why no debris? If they reached land, why no settlements, no artifacts? Some speculate the fleet fragmented, its survivors assimilating into distant cultures. Japanese legends in Wakayama Prefecture even claim Xu Fu's descendants still live there, their lineage a whispered secret, but without concrete proof, these remain tantalizing what-ifs. Modern technology hasn't solved the riddle. Sonar scans of the East China Sea reveal nothing conclusive, and the region's violent typhoons could have scattered any remnants across the ocean floor. There's another, darker theory that Xu Fu never intended to return. Did he deliberately sail beyond the emperor's reach, founding a new life far from the tyrannical rule of Qin Shi Huang? Or did the fleet meet a more sinister fate, captured by pirates, lost to disease, or ensnared by the same legends they sought to conquer? The mystery of Qin Shi Huang's lost fleet isn't just about missing ships. It's about the lengths humans will go to cheat death, the blurred line between myth and history, and an emperor's obsession that may have doomed hundreds to vanish beneath the waves. Every unanswered question makes the sea seem less like water and more like a mirror reflecting our own endless hunger for the impossible. The North Sea in the year 9 was a graveyard of imperial ambition. Emperor Augustus, the master of Rome's golden age, had sent his mighty Liburnian Galleys, swift, oar-powered warships, to crush Germanic tribes along the coast. These vessels were the backbone of Roman naval power, feared for their speed and precision. Yet in a single catastrophic event, an entire squadron vanished without a single survivor to tell the tale. Ancient historians like Tacitus and Cassius Dio mention the disaster only in passing, as if even Rome's greatest scribes couldn't bear to dwell on the humiliation. Storms are the obvious culprit. The North Sea in autumn is a tempestuous beast, capable of swallowing ships whole with waves like collapsing mountains. Roman galleys, built for the Mediterranean's calmer waters, were ill-suited to these brutal northern gales. Some historians argue the fleet was caught in a sudden squall, its low-slung hulls swamped before the crews could react. But there's a twist. Germanic tribes like the Cherusci were renowned for their knowledge of the coast. Could they have lured the Romans into a deadly trap, using submerged sandbanks or false signal fires to strand the galleys before attacking? The rebel sabotage theory gains traction when you consider Rome's bitter rival, Arminius, a Germanic chieftain raised in Rome who knew its tactics intimately. His infamous ambush in the Teutoburg forest just weeks earlier had already decimated 3 legions. Was the naval disaster another stroke of his cunning? The absence of wreckage deepens the mystery. If the galleys sank in a storm, why no debris? If they were ambushed, why no Roman accounts of a battle? Modern searches have turned up nothing conclusive. In 2016, a team scanning the German Bight with sonar detected anomalies that could be ancient hulls, but the shifting sands of the North Sea bury secrets as quickly as they reveal them. Even more haunting are local legends of ghost ships seen near the Frisian Islands, their oars still thrashing against the waves centuries later. What truly happened to Augustus's lost fleet? The sea keeps its silence, but one thing is certain: this wasn't just a military defeat, it was a turning point. The moment Rome's expansion northward hit a wall of wind, water, and rebellion. The vanishing of those galleys didn't just cost the empire ships, it cost them an entire frontier. Deep beneath the Mediterranean cerulean waves, where sunlight barely reaches, lies the shattered grandeur of Thonis-Heracleion. Once the bustling gateway between ancient Egypt and the Greek world, this legendary harbor city thrived for centuries until the sea swallowed it whole. Earthquakes, rising waters, or some forgotten catastrophe dragged its temples, statues, and streets into the abyss around the 2nd century BCE. But here's what chills archaeologists to the bone. While the ruins of Thonis-Heracleion have been meticulously mapped, its ships are conspicuously absent. Not a single wreck has been found in the harbor's silt. Where did they go? Divers exploring the site have uncovered treasures fit for pharaohs, colossal statues of gods, golden amulets, even the remains of ancient piers. Yet the vessels that once crowded these piers, the lifeblood of trade and conquest, have vanished without a trace. This wasn't some sleepy fishing village. Thonis-Heracleion was a maritime powerhouse. Historians estimate hundreds of ships would have docked here at any given time, from Egyptian barges laden with grain to Greek triremes bristling with oars. Their disappearance defies logic. If the city sank gradually, why weren't ships scuttled or abandoned in the chaos? If it was a sudden cataclysm, why no wreckage? One theory points to the harbor's unique geology. Thonis-Heracleion was built on unstable sediment, a recipe for disaster when earthquakes struck. Some suggest the ground liquefied, swallowing ships whole before the city itself collapsed. Imagine crews scrambling as their vessels were sucked into the seabed like quicks, and a nightmare scenario with no time for escape. Others propose a mass exodus. Perhaps warnings allowed the fleet to flee before the disaster, only to be lost elsewhere in the Mediterranean. But this raises another question. With no records of such a flotilla arriving safely in other ports, did they vanish at sea too? Then there's the eerie silence of local lore. Most sunken cities spawn legends of ghostly bells or underwater chariots, yet Egyptian and Greek texts barely mention Thonis-Heracleion's fate. It's as if the entire harbor and its ships were erased from memory. Modern technology hasn't solved the riddle. Sonar scans show empty seabed where the anchorage once thrived, and sediment cores reveal no telltale layers of shattered hulls. The ocean, it seems, took the ships and kept them. Perhaps the most haunting possibility is that the vessels didn't sink at all. Could they have been deliberately moved, stripped, or repurposed before the city's fall? Some scholars point to cryptic inscriptions mentioning the fleet of the last voyage, hinting at a desperate mission to salvage Egypt's wealth before the waves came. But without a single ship to study, we're left grasping at shadows. The phantom vessels of Thonis-Heracleion aren't just a missing fleet, they're a gaping hole in maritime history, a reminder that even the mightiest ports can disappear, taking their secrets to the depths. 5 centuries before the birth of Christ, Carthage ruled the waves, a maritime empire so powerful even Rome eyed its fleets with envy. And at the height of its glory, the city launched one of antiquity's most daring expeditions. 60 ships, thousands of colonists, and a legendary commander named Hanno the Navigator, tasked with sailing beyond the known world. Their mission, to establish new settlements along Africa's western coast, a realm so mysterious Greek cartographers marked it only with dragons and the chilling phrase, "Here be monsters." Hanno's own account survives on a single battered parchment, a tale of roaring volcanoes, encounters with hairy savages, and rivers of fire flowing into the sea. But the story ends abruptly. After passing the Pillars of Hercules, his fleet vanishes from history. Not a single colony was ever found. Not a trace of those 60 ships has surfaced. What happened to Carthage's lost armada? Hanno's own words only deepen the puzzle. His log describes sailing south for months, founding cities with names like Cern and Arambes, and surviving horrors no Mediterranean sailor had ever faced. One passage tells of an island where flames shot skyward, higher than the tallest tower, its shores lined with apes with human faces who hurled stones at the ships. Modern scholars argue these could be volcanoes like Mount Kakuluma in Guinea, or tribes of chimpanzees, details twisted by time and translation. But the truly unsettling part comes next. After reaching what might be modern Sierra Leone or even Gabon, Hanno writes of turning back, yet Carthaginian records show no returning fleet, the colonies he claimed to establish. Silent, as if the Atlantic swallowed them whole, one theory suggests disaster struck in the form of a tropical cyclone. The Gulf of Guinea is notorious for sudden, vicious storms capable of splintering wooden ships like matchsticks. If Hanno's fleet was caught unaware, the waves wouldn't have left so much as a plank behind. Others propose a more intriguing fate: integration. Could the Carthaginians have abandoned their ships, merging with local kingdoms? Some West African oral traditions speak of pale strangers from across the water who brought ironworking skills to regions like Cameroon centuries before European contact. Archaeologists have even found Mediterranean-style beads near the Senegal River, though none can confirm a Carthaginian link. The silence of Carthage itself raises eyebrows. For a civilization that meticulously documented trade routes, the total lack of follow-up voyages suggests something went terribly wrong. Was the expedition deemed cursed, or did Hanno discover something so threatening or so valuable that Carthage sealed the records? Spanish divers searching near the Canary Islands in the 1980s reported spotting strange, ancient hulls sunk in deep water, but storms prevented recovery. Were these Hanno's ships or just another dead end? The disappearance of Carthage's greatest fleet isn't just a maritime mystery. It's a question mark hanging over the dawn of exploration, a reminder that even the boldest adventurers could vanish without a whisper. Whether claimed by the sea or absorbed into the fabric of a forgotten shore, Hanno's legacy endures as a haunting what-if, proof that the ocean's greatest trick isn't drowning sailors, but erasing them from history itself. The Tang dynasty's golden age was built on diplomacy as much as conquest, its fleets carrying silks, scrolls, and imperial promises across the seas. But in the 8th century, not one but two of these grand diplomatic missions, each with dozens of ships and hundreds of envoys, vanished without explanation. The first fleet, bound for Korea in 753, disappeared somewhere in the Yellow Sea. Just 3 years later, a second armada, destined for Japan, met the same fate in the East China Sea. No wreckage, no survivors, no records of storms, only silence. For an empire that meticulously documented every grain shipment and border skirmish, this double disappearance was more than a tragedy. It was a riddle wrapped in imperial scandal. Monsoons are the usual suspects. Summer typhoons in these waters can shred wooden ships like parchment, leaving no trace. Yet Korean and Japanese court records from the same years mention no extraordinary storms. This glaring absence fuels darker theories. Some scholars point to the An Lushan Rebellion, a civil war that nearly toppled the Tang dynasty around the same time. Could political enemies have sabotaged the fleets to weaken Emperor Xuanzong's alliances? Korean pirates known to prowl those routes might have ambushed the ships, sinking them to hide the evidence of plundered treasures. Even more chilling is the possibility of deliberate cover-ups. Diplomatic failures were embarrassments no emperor wanted recorded. Were the fleets lost to incompetence, poor navigation, overloaded hulls, and their fates erased to save face? Then there's Japan's curious reaction. When the second Tang fleet failed to arrive, the Japanese court dispatched search vessels only to find nothing. No debris, no bodies. It's as if the ships had never existed. Centuries later, fishermen near Tsushima Island told tales of ghost sails seen on foggy mornings, their rigging tattered but still flying Tang banners. Modern marine archaeologists have scoured the seabed near the fleet's planned routes, uncovering Tang-era ceramics and anchor stones, but never a full wreck. The artifacts hint at a scattered disaster, not a single catastrophic event. Perhaps the truth lies in the politics of the era. The Tang dynasty's influence in Korea and Japan was waning, and both kingdoms were asserting independence. Did they quietly repel the fleets, erasing the incidents from history, or was there a deeper, unseen threat, a maritime phenomenon we still don't understand? The twin disappearances remain a masterclass in historical irony. The very ships meant to project imperial power became symbols of its limits, swallowed by the sea and the shadows of time. One final clue lingers. In the 1990s, a shipwreck found off Korea's coast held Tang coins and shattered pottery, but the hull's design didn't match known Chinese or Korean styles. Could this be a ghost from one of the lost fleets, or just another merchant claimed by the waves? Until more evidence surfaces, the fate of those vanished envoys stands as a testament to the ocean's ruthless diplomacy. It doesn't negotiate, it doesn't explain, it simply takes. The Norse sagas tell of a land beyond the western horizon, lush, wild, and ripe for conquest. They called it Vinland, a place where grapes grew thick as fog and the rivers teemed with fish. By the 11th century, Viking longships had already proven they could cross the Atlantic, settling Iceland and Greenland. But Vinland was different. The sagas speak of Nar's sturdy, broad-beamed cargo ships loaded with settlers, livestock, and dreams of a new frontier. Then silence. Several voyages set out for this promised land. Some returned with tales of forests and firs, but others vanished without a trace. The ocean swallowed them whole, leaving only cryptic verses in the sagas and a question that haunts historians. What happened to the lost Nars of Vinland? Greenland's ice cores hold eerie clues. Layers of sediment dating to the early 11th century show sudden spikes in sea salt, telltale signs of massive North Atlantic storms. These weren't ordinary squalls, they were tempests capable of flinging a Nar end over end like a toy. To make matters worse, Norse navigation relied on sunstones and gut instinct. In a blizzard or fog bank, even seasoned sailors could veer wildly off course, missing Vinland entirely and sailing into the open maw of the ocean. Some researchers argue the lost ships were victims of these black storms, their crews freezing or starving before they sighted land. Others propose a darker twist: sabotage. The sagas mention skirmishes with the indigenous Thule people, ancestors of the Inuit. Were some Nars ambushed along the coast, their remains hidden beneath centuries of tundra? Indigenous oral histories add another layer to the mystery. Passed down through generations, these stories speak of floating houses appearing along the coast only to disappear again. One account from the Mi'kmaq people describes strangers with hair like fire who came ashore but never returned to their ships. Could these be echoes of doomed Viking crews? Archaeologists have scoured the coasts of Newfoundland and Labrador, uncovering Norse artifacts like a cloak pin at Elance Orcs Meadows, proof the Vikings reached North America. Yet no sunken Nars have been found. The absence is deafening. If the ships sank near shore, why no wreckage? If they were lost at sea, why do the sagas hint at land-based tragedies? The most haunting theory suggests some Nars made it to Vinland but chose not to return. Facing starvation, mutiny, or conflict, did the crews abandon their ships and melt into the wilderness? In the 1960s, a strange ruin was discovered in Maine's Penobscot River, a rectangular structure with Viking-style post holes. Though debated, it raises the tantalizing possibility that some Norsemen survived far longer than records show. Without the lost Nars as evidence, we're left with fragments. A storm's ghost in the ice, a whisper in an elder's story, a rusted nail in the dirt. The Vinland voyages weren't just failures, they were riddles wrapped in oak planks and sailcloth, lost to time and tide. Perhaps the answer lies not in the sea but in the sagas themselves. These stories weren't just history, they were warnings. To the Vikings, the ocean was both road and reaper, a giver of life and a taker of men. The lost Nars of Vinland serve as a reminder that even the boldest explorers were at the mercy of the waves, and that some mysteries are meant to stay buried beneath them. On a cold October night in 1307, as King Philip IV of France moved to destroy the Knights Templar, whispers spread of a secret fleet slipping anchor under cover of darkness. The Templars, bankers, warriors, and Europe's most powerful medieval order had seen the tide turning against them. Accused of heresy and stripped of their wealth, their Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, would soon burn at the stake. But legend claims the order's greatest treasures, gold, holy relics, even the lost Ark of the Covenant, were already gone, loaded onto ships that vanished into the Atlantic mist. Some say 8 vessels, others claim 12. All agree not one was ever seen again. Theories about their fate spiral like the labyrinthine tunnels beneath Templar strongholds. One persistent tale ties them to Nova Scotia's Oak Island, where centuries later, explorers would find a flooded pit dubbed the Money Pit, its layers of booby-trapped logs and cryptic inscriptions fueling speculation. Could this be where the Templars buried their hoard? Modern sonar scans off the Baltic coast add another twist: strange, ship-shaped anomalies deep beneath the waves, their outlines eerily consistent with medieval cogs. But here's the catch: no dives have confirmed these as Templar vessels, and Baltic waters are littered with wrecks from every era. Then there's Portugal's role. While Templars were hunted across Europe, King Denis of Portugal sheltered them, rebranding the order as the Knights of Christ. Did his protection extend to their fleet? Portuguese sailors later carried the order's signature cross on their sails during the Age of Exploration, including Vasco da Gama. Were these the same ships that once held the Templars' secrets? Maritime historians note a curious gap in 13th century. Records no accounts of storms or battles that could account for a dozen missing vessels. Their absence is as deliberate as it is mysterious. The Baltic anomalies raise more questions than answers. In 2010, Swedish oceanographers mapping the seafloor near Gotland discovered a cluster of unusual formations. Some resemble ships, their outlines too precise for natural rock. Yet without physical evidence, they could be glacial debris or even WW2 relics. Templar enthusiasts point to the nearby island of Bornholm, long rumored as a Templar hideout, but archaeologists have found no definitive proof. The ocean guards its secrets well. Perhaps the most haunting clue lies in the Templars' own rituals. Initiates were blindfolded and told the order's true treasures were not of gold but of knowledge. Did their fleet carry something far more valuable: ancient texts, forbidden maps, or alchemical secrets? If so, their disappearance wasn't an accident. It was a calculated act of preservation, ensuring their legacy survived not in chests of coins but in shadows and whispers. The Templar ships may be lost, but their legend sails on forever just beyond the horizon. The Ming Dynasty's treasure fleets were the marvel of their age, colossal armadas of hundreds of ships, some as large as football fields, crisscrossing the Indian Ocean with silks, spices, and imperial might. At their peak under Admiral Zheng He, these fleets reached as far as Africa, leaving awe in their wake. But one voyage defies explanation. In 1433, as Zheng He's 7th and final expedition returned to China, an entire auxiliary fleet, some say as many as 30 ships, detached near Sumatra and vanished. No storms, no battles, just silence where there should have been sails. Records from the Ming court are strangely opaque. While Zheng He's journeys were meticulously documented, this missing fleet merits only a single line: the auxiliary ships did not return. No explanation, no search parties. It's as if the empire itself wanted the incident forgotten. Historians have pieced together theories from fragments. The most plausible: a monsoon. The waters near Sumatra are notorious for sudden squalls that can scatter ships like leaves, but survivors would have drifted to shore or been picked up by traders. The absence of any wreckage suggests something more deliberate. Here's where the intrigue deepens. The Ming Dynasty was undergoing a seismic shift. The new emperor, Hongxi, saw the treasure fleets as wasteful extravagances. Within years, China would abandon ocean exploration altogether, burning logs and ship blueprints in a fit of isolationism. Was the missing fleet an early casualty of this political purge? Some scholars argue the ships were deliberately scuttled to erase evidence of Zheng He's influence. Others whisper of mutiny, a crew defying orders to return, perhaps seeking a new life in the spice-rich islands of Indonesia. Local legends add another layer. Along Sumatra's coast, oral histories tell of iron giants that washed ashore centuries ago, their hulls empty but intact. Were these the ghost ships of the Ming fleet? Archaeologists have yet to find proof, though a 15th-century Chinese anchor discovered off Java in 2012 hints at the possibility. The most chilling theory involves imperial sabotage. The treasure fleets were rivals to the court's land-based factions. If a powerful minister ordered the fleet's destruction, no record would dare mention it. The disappearance of Zheng He's auxiliary ships is more than a maritime mystery. It's a window into a pivotal moment when China turned its back on the sea. Had those 30 ships returned, would history remember the Ming Dynasty as the rulers of two worlds? Instead, their fate remains adrift in the tides of politics and time, a silent testament to the ocean's power to erase even the grandest ambitions. The Spanish galleon San Miguel was the pride of the Caribbean fleet, a towering warship laden with treasures ripped from the heart of the Aztec Empire. In the summer of 1551, it set sail from Veracruz, its hold groaning under the weight of golden idols, emeralds the size of fists, and chests of silver meant to fill King Charles V's coffers. But somewhere near the western edge of the Bermuda Triangle, the San Miguel and its crew of 200 vanished as if swallowed by the horizon. No wreckage. No survivors, just an eerie silence that would echo through centuries of maritime lore. Hurricanes are the likeliest culprit. The summer of 1551 was one of the most violent storm seasons on record, with Spanish logs describing mountains of water crushing entire fleets. Modern meteorologists studying sediment cores from Caribbean seabeds confirm this period saw back-to-back Category 5 storms, monsters capable of flipping a galleon like a toy. But here's the twist: the San Miguel's route should have kept it just north of the worst hurricane tracks, unless the navigator miscalculated or the storm itself defied expectations. Some scholars point to the ship's heavy cargo as its doom. Overloaded with gold, it would have ridden low in the water, making it sluggish in high winds. A single rogue wave could have sent it plunging straight to the abyss. Yet the mystery deepens with the Bermuda Triangle's earliest legends. Decades before the triangle earned its infamous name, Spanish sailors spoke of a devil's zone where compasses spun wildly and ships disappeared without warning. The San Miguel's last known position lies squarely in that cursed corridor. Could magnetic anomalies have disoriented its crew, steering them into a storm's path? Or was there something stranger at work? Fishermen off Bermuda still tell tales of golden ghosts, glimpsed beneath the waves on moonless nights, shadowy figures dragging chests across the seabed. The hunt for the San Miguel's wreck has tantalized treasure hunters for generations. In 2014, a team scanning the ocean floor near Grand Bahama detected a magnetic anomaly resembling a galleon's outline. But before they could investigate, a sudden storm forced them to abandon the site, an unsettling echo of the very disaster that might have claimed the ship. Whether cursed coincidence or cruel irony, the San Miguel clings to its secrets. What makes this disappearance endure isn't just the lost gold. It's the way the San Miguel's fate intertwines with two of history's greatest enigmas, the brutal legacy of Aztec plunder and the birth of the Bermuda Triangle myth. Every storm season, when the Atlantic roars to life, the ghost of that galleon seems to whisper a warning. Some treasures are meant to stay lost. The Dutch East India Company ruled the waves of the 17th century, its crimson-sailed fleets crisscrossing oceans to build an empire on spices and silver. But in the 1620s, two of its ships, the Batavia and the Zeewijk, vanished along the treacherous western coast of Australia, leaving behind not just wreckage, but whispers of mutiny, madness, and reefs that seemed to hiss like serpents in the night. The Batavia's story is the stuff of nightmares. In 1629, this merchant ship struck the Houtman-Abrolhos reefs, a jagged maze of coral known to Dutch sailors as the Dragon's Teeth. Survivors scrambled onto tiny islands only to face a horror worse than the sea. The ship's under-merchant Jeronimus Cornelis seized control, orchestrating a reign of terror that saw over 100 men, women, and children slaughtered in cold blood. By the time rescue arrived, the sands ran red. Yet the Batavia's wreck wasn't the mystery, it was what happened next. Years later, fishermen swore they heard screams echoing across the reefs at low tide, and sailors reported ghostly lanterns flickering where no ship could possibly sail. The Zwake's disappearance in 1727 was quieter but no less eerie. Bound for Java with a fortune in silver bars, it too met the Abrolhos reefs. Survivors built a makeshift sloop from the wreckage and escaped, but the ship itself and its treasure vanished into the shallows. What baffles historians is the crew's account of the reefs hissing as the Zwake grounded, a sound later attributed to air trapped in coral but described in logs as the breath of some leviathan. Even stranger, when archaeologists rediscovered the wreck in 1963, key sections were missing: the stern, the treasure hold, even the captain's logbook. Had the ship broken apart, or had someone returned to plunder its secrets? The Batavia and Zwake share more than a graveyard. Both wrecks occurred in the same stretch of reef, a place Dutch maps marked with skulls and the warning, "God has abandoned us here." Modern divers confirm the reef's malevolence. Sharp coral fingers snag hulls even in calm seas, and currents pull wrecks into hidden crevices. Yet the real horror lies in the details. Batavia's survivors wrote of shadows that moved without men, while Zwake's crew insisted their compasses spun wildly before the crash, phenomena now attributed to magnetic anomalies but eerily presaging Bermuda Triangle lore. Why do these two wrecks haunt us? Because they're not just tragedies, they're grotesque tapestries of human folly and nature's cruelty. The Batavia shows how quickly civilization crumbles in the face of desperation, while the Zwake whispers of the ocean's uncanny ability to erase even the mightiest ships. Centuries later, the Houtman-Abrolhos remain a maritime graveyard, their reefs still hissing, their ghosts still waiting. And somewhere beneath those turquoise waves, the Dutch East India Company's lost silver gleams in the dark, a siren's call to those who dare listen. By 1788, Captain Jean-François de Galop, Comte de la Pérouse, was leading one of history's most ambitious scientific expeditions, a voyage to rival even the legendary journeys of Cook. France had spared no expense, equipping two ships, the Astrolabe and the Boussole, with the finest astronomers, botanists, and cartographers of the age. Their mission: to map the Pacific, document its cultures, and unlock the secrets of uncharted lands. But after leaving Botany Bay in March of that year, the entire expedition vanished. No distress signals, no wreckage, just silence stretching across an ocean that had suddenly become a tomb. The first clues surfaced decades later. In 1826, a British captain exploring Vanikoro, a remote island in the Solomons, found something chilling: scattered nails, fragments of porcelain, and a ship's bell engraved with the words, "Bazin est ma fate," "Bazin made me," a signature linking it to the Boussole's foundry. These weren't random flotsam. The artifacts lay in a pattern suggesting violent dispersal, as if the ships had been dashed against Vanikoro's razor-sharp reefs in a storm. But the real breakthrough came from the islanders themselves. Their oral histories spoke of floating houses breaking apart in a night of howling winds, and pale-skinned strangers who survived only to perish later. One elder recounted a haunting detail. The Europeans had built a small boat from wreckage, then sailed west straight into the unknown. Modern archaeology adds eerie precision to the tale. Divers off Vanikoro have identified cannonballs matching French naval specs, along with anchors too large for indigenous craft. The wreck sites are shallow, just 30 feet below the surface, yet the coral has devoured much of the evidence, leaving only cryptic fragments. One theory suggests the ships were caught in a diamond hurricane, a rare convergence of multiple cyclones that could pulverize even sturdy vessels. But another possibility lingers: mutiny. La Pérouse's journals, salvaged from Botany Bay before departure, hinted at tensions among the crew. Did desperation turn them against each other before the waves finished the job? The most haunting question isn't how they died, but what they discovered first. Vanikoro's reefs are littered with silver spoons, surgical tools, and even a pair of spectacles artifacts frozen in time. Were these scientists on the brink of some revelation when the storm hit? Or does the island hold even darker secrets? To this day, Vanikoro's waters whisper to those who listen, their currents hiding answers we may never fully grasp. The La Pérouse expedition wasn't just lost, it was swallowed mid-story, leaving us to wonder what final pages the sea refuses to surrender. The coral-choked waters off Vanikoro have surrendered fragments of La Pérouse's doomed expedition for centuries, but the 21st century brought revelations that rewrote the mystery. In 2005, a team of French and Australian archaeologists combing the seabed near the island's fringing reefs made a chilling discovery: 4 massive iron anchors, their flukes crusted with 2 centuries of marine growth arranged in a perfect star pattern. This wasn't random debris. The alignment suggested a frantic, last-ditch effort to stabilize the astrolabe and bowsole as they were driven onto the reef, their crews heaving anchors into the shallows in a desperate bid to avoid catastrophe. Then came the bones. Scattered among the artifacts were human remains, some with fractures consistent with violent trauma, silent witnesses to the ship's final moments. Yet the flagship's main wreck remains stubbornly elusive. Modern sonar surveys have mapped swaths of Vanikoro's underwater topography, revealing tantalizing anomalies: a concentration of cannonballs here, a cluster of nails there, but no intact hull. Marine archaeologists face a maddening puzzle. The ship's construction materials, primarily oak and pine, would have decayed rapidly in the warm, nutrient-rich waters, while cyclones and strong currents likely scattered the debris across miles of seabed. But there's another, more unsettling possibility. Local oral histories hint that survivors salvaged usable timber to build shelters or even a smaller vessel. Could the flagship's bones have been repurposed before the ocean claimed them? One breakthrough came in 2018 when divers uncovered a bronze sextant encased in coral near the anchorage site. Its engravings matched instruments known to have been aboard the bowsole, confirming the ships met their end in this very spot. But the sextant also held a cryptic clue: its calibration was set for a course due west toward the open Pacific. Had La Pérouse, realizing Vanikoro was a death trap, ordered a last doomed attempt to reach help? Or does this artifact point to a handful of survivors who escaped the island, only to vanish into the vastness of the sea? The most haunting finds aren't objects but absences. Despite extensive searches, no captain's log or personal journals have been recovered, the very records that could reveal what La Pérouse's expedition witnessed before disaster struck. Were these documents deliberately destroyed to protect sensitive discoveries, or do they lie buried in Vanikoro's sediment, waiting for a storm to expose them? The island's reefs guard their secrets with a cruel patience, offering just enough to keep the mystery alive. Every artifact is a breadcrumb, leading not to an answer but to deeper questions. Even now, as technology peels back layers of time, La Pérouse's flagship refuses to surrender its truth, as if some stories are meant to stay lost beneath the waves. The USS Insurgent sliced through the Caribbean swells like a blade, her 36 guns gleaming under the tropical sun, one of the United States Navy's proudest new frigates, built to defend merchant ships from French privateers during the bitter Quasi-War. But in September 1800, just 2 years after her launch, the Insurgent and her crew of 340 vanished without a single distress signal, leaving behind only whispers and conspiracy. To this day, she remains the U.S. Navy's first major unexplained loss, a ghost ship swallowed by the fog of war, the mystery begins with her final mission. Ordered to patrol the waters between St. Kitts and Cuba, the insurgent was hunting French vessels preying on American trade routes. Captain Patrick Fletcher's last log entry, dated September 8, noted calm seas and nothing amiss. Then silence. When the ship failed to return to port by October, the Navy launched a frantic search, scouring the Caribbean's treacherous channels. Not a single splinter of wreckage was found. Theories exploded like cannon fire. Had a sudden hurricane overwhelmed her? Naval records show no storms in the region that month. Did she strike one of the uncharted reefs that litter those waters? Experienced crews like Fletcher's knew those dangers well. The most tantalizing clue points to the French. The quasi-war was a shadowy conflict fought with shifting loyalties and unflagged raids. Some historians argue the insurgent was captured by a superior French force, her crew imprisoned in Guadeloupe or Martinique to avoid diplomatic scandal. French archives from the era mention an unidentified American frigate taken around that time, though details are suspiciously vague. Could the insurgents' fate have been buried to prevent escalation? Others whisper of mutiny. The ship's previous captain, John Barry, had disciplined crewmen for drunkenness and insubordination. Did resentment boil over into violence mid-voyage, leaving the ship adrift and derelict? The Caribbean itself holds darker possibilities. In 1825, a British merchantman reported spotting a battered frigate matching the insurgents' description near the Bahamas, her sails in tatters and decks eerily empty. By the time rescuers could board, the ship had vanished again, fueling tales of a cursed vessel doomed to sail forever. Modern searches have turned up nothing conclusive, though sonar scans off the Turks and Caicos in 1998 revealed a wreck of the right size and era, buried under centuries of sand. Without raising the hull, the truth remains as elusive as the insurgents' ghostly silhouette on the horizon. What makes this disappearance so haunting isn't just the lost ship, it's the historical crossroads it represents. The Quasi-War was America's first naval conflict, a testing ground for a young nation's sea power. The insurgents' vanishing became a cautionary tale, shaping how the Navy tracked its ships and documented losses. Every modern protocol for overdue vessels traces back to the lessons learned from her silence. Yet the sea, as always, keeps its secrets. Whether claimed by war, mutiny, or some inexplicable fate, the USS Insurgent endures as a reminder that even the mightiest ships can slip through the fingers of history. The USS Wasp was a ghost even before she vanished. A sleek, 18-gun sloop of war, she'd earned a reputation as the Lucky Wasp after audacious victories against British ships twice her size during the War of 1812. But in October 1814, fresh from destroying the HMS Avon off the coast of Africa, the Wasp and her 173 crew members simply dissolved into the Atlantic. No wreckage, no survivors, just a phantom ship that slipped between the pages of history, leaving behind a trail of contradictions and whispers of foul play. British naval logs from the era offer terse, almost suspiciously neat explanations. A passing merchant ship reported spotting the Wasp battling a squall near the Madeira Islands, her sails torn and decks awash. By morning, the storm had passed and the Wasp was gone. The Admiralty quietly closed the case, chalking it up to the perils of Atlantic weather, but American sailors weren't convinced. The Wasp had survived worse storms. Her captain, Johnston Blakely, was a seasoned navigator who'd outmaneuvered the Royal Navy's best. Something didn't add up. Conspiracy theories flared like cannon flashes. Some whispered the Wasp had been ambushed by a British squadron, her sinking covered up to avoid admitting another humiliating loss. Others pointed to coded references in captured dispatches mentioning an American Hornet intercepted near the Azores, but no official engagement recorded. The most chilling theory, piracy. The Caribbean was crawling with privateers and renegade captains who'd happily slaughter a crew and repaint a warship's hull to avoid detection. A few even claimed to have seen the Wasp's distinctive figurehead, a snarling wasp with gold leaf wings mounted on an unflagged frigate in Buenos Aires years later. Modern historians pore over maritime insurance records for clues. One policy, filed by a Philadelphia merchant in 1815, lists payment for a cargo lost aboard a vessel matching the Wasp's dimensions near Bermuda, but the ship's name is conspicuously blotted out. Sonar scans in the 1990s revealed a wreck near Madeira with 18 cannon ports, but storms prevented recovery. Could this be the Wasp or just another casualty of the sea's endless hunger? The truth may lie in the gaps between nation stories. British logs downplay the Wasp's prowess, American accounts inflate it. Both sides had reasons to obscure the facts: pride, politics, or something darker. What's undeniable is this: the ocean took the Wasp at the height of her glory, leaving us to wonder whether her end came from waves, war, or a secret too explosive to surface. Some ships don't just sink, they're erased. The Pacific whaling grounds of the 1820s were a theater of both fortune and fury, where the ocean's bounty could fatten a captain's purse or snap his ship in half with a single lash of a tail. Two Nantucket brigs, the Awash and the Lucy Ann, learned this lesson the hard way. Both vessels vanished in the same treacherous stretch of the Pacific, their fates entwined with the very creatures they hunted, sperm whales, the leviathans of the deep. But while their disappearances shared eerie similarities, the whispers that followed painted starkly different nightmares. The Awash was a seasoned hunter, her crew hardened by years of harpooning bulls in the equatorial whaling grounds. Then, in 1823, her luck ran out. A passing British whaler, the Diana, spotted debris near the Galapagos, shattered longboats, splintered casks, and a single tooth-marked plank the size of a man's torso. The claw-like gouges matched the serrated jaws of a sperm whale, but the damage went beyond any ordinary attack. The wreckage was scattered across miles, as if the ship had been dismantled piece by piece. Survivors from other vessels told of bulls that turned rogue, targeting ships with unnatural precision. One even described a whale deliberately ramming a ship's rudder, crippling it before circling back for the kill. Had the Awash provoked a pod's wrath or stumbled upon a whale that remembered vengeance, the Lucy Ann's disappearance 2 years later was quieter but no less chilling. Her last log entry described a bumper catch 90 barrels of oil stored below decks, with crews boiling blubber under a blood-red sunset, then silence. When a Chilean trader found her 6 months later near Easter Island, the brig was adrift, her sails still set and her decks deserted, no signs of struggle. No splintered whaleboats, just a half-eaten meal in the captain's cabin and a lone harpoon, still dripping with oil, lashed to the rail. This was where the rumors began. Some whispered of mutiny, pointing to the Lucy Ann's reputation for brutal discipline. Others spun darker tales of men driven mad by isolation who turned on each other, their final hours lost to hunger or delirium. But the most persistent legend spoke of the greasy sickness, a curse said to follow ships that harvested too greedily. Whalers knew the danger. Sperm whale oil could spoil into a toxic sludge if stored improperly, releasing fumes that caused hallucinations and violent fits. Did the Lucy Ann's crew poison themselves with their own cargo, leaping into the sea to escape invisible flames? The Pacific kept its secrets, but whalers noticed something chilling in the years that followed. Ships that ventured near the Awash's last coordinates reported spouts on the horizon, not the scattered breaths of a migrating pod, but a tight formation, moving in unison like a fleet. As for the Lucy Ann's ghostly reappearance, she was towed to Valparaiso, where dockhands swore her hold still reeked of rancid oil and something faintly metallic like old blood. Both brigs became cautionary tales, proof that the ocean's greatest predators weren't always the ones with teeth. Sometimes they were the monsters men carried aboard. The waters off West Africa in the mid-19th century were a lawless frontier where the Royal Navy's anti-slavery patrols clashed with ruthless traders in a deadly game of cat and mouse. The HMS Sappho, a sleek 8-gun brigantine, was built for this very fight, her crew tasked with intercepting slave ships and freeing their human cargo. But in February 1858, after a routine pursuit near the Guinea coast, the Sappho vanished so completely that even the sea seemed to forget she'd ever existed. No wreckage, no survivors, just empty waves where a warship and her 126 souls should have been. Initial reports pointed to the obvious foe, slave traders. The Sappho had made enemies, her recent captures disrupting a lucrative and brutal trade. Retaliation wasn't just possible, it was likely. Spanish and Portuguese slavers operating in the region were known to arm their ships with hidden cannon, and whispers spoke of a secret alliance among traders to remove troublesome patrols. A few months before her disappearance, the Sappho's captain had confided in a letter about strange vessels shadowing her movements, their crews too practiced in their maneuvers. Could the brig have been lured into an ambush, her boarding party overwhelmed before they could fire a distress signal? Skeptics dismiss this theory, noting the Sappho's firepower would have left evidence of a battle, yet not a single spent cartridge or splintered hull ever washed ashore. Then there's the sea's own treachery. Mariners who'd sailed those waters spoke of the White Squall, a sudden, violent storm that struck without warning, its fury invisible until it was too late. Unlike dark thunderheads, these tempests formed under clear skies, their winds hitting with such force they could capsize a ship in minutes. The Sappho's last logged position placed her near the Cape Verde Basin, a notorious squall alley. In 1859, a merchantman reported encountering a freak wave in the same area, like a wall of glass, tall enough to swallow a brig whole. The mystery deepens with a single, chilling artifact. 5 years after the Sappho's disappearance, a British consul in Liberia purchased a naval officer's sword from a local trader. Its engraved hilt bore the initials of the Sappho's lieutenant. The trader claimed it had come from a ghost canoe found drifting offshore, empty except for the blade. Had it been plundered from a wreck, or was it a grim message left by those who'd silenced the Sappho forever? Modern meteorology offers little closure. While white squalls are now understood as microbursts, columns of sinking air that hit the ocean with hurricane force, they remain nearly impossible to predict. Divers have searched the seabed near Cape Verde, but the currents there scatter wreckage across miles of abyssal plain. The Sappho's fate may forever balance between two horrors, the cruelty of men or the indifference of the sea. Either way, her disappearance stands as a stark reminder that even the ships tasked with upholding justice weren't immune to the ocean's lawless embrace. The SS Waratah was meant to be Australia's pride, a state-of-the-art passenger liner dubbed the Down Under Titanic for her opulence and scale. When she set sail from Durban in July 1909, bound for Cape Town with 211 souls aboard, the voyage should have been routine. But the Waratah carried more than passengers and cargo. She carried whispers. Even before departure, a first-class traveler abruptly cancelled his booking, telling crew members he'd dreamed of the ship, standing on end, plunging into black water. Another passenger reported eerie groans from the hull during the journey, as if the steel itself were protesting. Crew members brushed off the complaints, but the ocean would soon have the final say. Days after leaving Durban, the Waratah exchanged signals with another vessel near the treacherous Agulhas Current, a stretch of water so volatile sailors called it the Cape of Storms. The ship was never seen again, no distress call, no wreckage, just an empty horizon where a 500-foot liner should have been. Search parties scoured the coast for weeks, turning up nothing but a single lifebuoy bleached by sun and salt. The official inquiry concluded the Waratah had capsized in a freak wave, but skeptics scoffed. A ship of that size didn't vanish without a trace unless something far stranger was at play. For decades, the mystery festered until 1977, when a marine survey ship scanning the seabed near East London detected a massive, hull-shaped anomaly. Sonar images showed a wreck matching the Waratah's dimensions, lying in almost 1,000 feet of water. But when divers attempted to reach it, powerful currents and shifting sediment made verification impossible. Even more chilling were the local fishermen's accounts. Some swore they'd seen a ghostly steamer materialize in stormy weather, its portholes glowing faintly before dissolving into the mist. Others told of hearing phantom foghorns in calm seas, echoes of a ship doomed to repeat its final moments. Why does the Waratah's disappearance haunt us so deeply? Perhaps because it defies the hubris of its era. This was the age of ironclad confidence in engineering, where men believed they'd tamed the sea. The Waratah's vanishing was a brutal reminder the ocean keeps its own counsel, and no ship, no matter how advanced, is truly unsinkable. Even now, as technology peels back the depths, the wreck refuses to give up its secrets, whether claimed by a rogue wave, boiler explosion, or something more sinister. The Waratah endures as a maritime ghost story, one where the line between fact and folklore blurs like a ship fading into the horizon. The SS Waratah's disappearance wasn't just a mystery, it was a perfect storm of bad luck, flawed engineering, and a cargo hold that might have sealed the ship's fate. One of the most persistent theories centers on her coal. Unlike modern vessels, steamships like the Waratah carried thousands of tons of coal in loosely packed bunkers, a design choice that turned deadly if the ship rolled too far. Survivors from other doomed liners described how shifting coal could destabilize a vessel in heavy seas, causing it to list uncontrollably until water flooded the lower decks. The Waratah's final voyage was no exception. Eyewitnesses from Durban reported seeing her sitting unusually low in the water before departure, her hull straining under the weight of what some claimed was an overloaded, improperly secured cargo. But coal wasn't the only culprit. The Waratah was a product of her time, an experimental hybrid of old-world craftsmanship and cutting-edge technology, with design quirks that bordered on reckless. Her builders had touted her self-righting capabilities, claiming her hull could recover from extreme rolls. Yet naval architects later criticized her high center of gravity and narrow beam, flaws that could amplify even minor waves into catastrophes. One chilling detail from the inquiry stood out. A crewman from a sister ship recounted how the Waratah's designers had ignored warnings about her instability during sea trials, dismissing concerns with a now haunting assurance, she'll settle in time. Then there's the enigma of her final hours. The last ship to spot the Waratah, the Clan McIntyre, reported her steaming into a gathering squall off the Wild Coast, a region notorious for freak waves. But what happened next diverges into two nightmarish possibilities. Some believe the Waratah's coal shifted violently in the storm, causing a sudden, irrecoverable capsize. Others point to her experimental watertight compartments, which may have failed under pressure, flooding the ship in minutes. The absence of wreckage suggests a swift end, but one artifact fuels darker speculation. In the 1990s, a salvage team claimed to have detected a massive debris field near the continental shelf, its scattered coal piles aligning with the theory of an internal explosion. The most haunting question isn't just how the Waratah sank, but why no one saw it coming. The ship's builders had been so confident in her design they'd skipped critical safety audits, while her owners dismissed early complaints about her handling as new ship jitters. Even the ocean seemed to conspire against her, with the Agulha's current's unpredictable eddies potentially masking her final distress signals. Whether by human arrogance, mechanical failure, or the sea's raw fury, the Waratah's fate serves as a grim lesson, a reminder that no ship, no matter how advanced, is ever truly unsinkable. Her ghost lingers in every safety regulation written in her wake, a silent witness to the cost of overlooking the ocean's wrath. The USS Cyclops was a beast of a ship, 500 feet of steel, built to haul mountains of coal for the United States Navy's hungry fleet. But in March 1918, this mammoth collier carrying 306 souls and a mysterious cargo of manganese ore vanished without a trace. No sauce, no debris, just an eerie silence that turned the Cyclops into the Bermuda Triangle's most infamous victim and sparked whispers of sabotage, mutiny, and something far stranger lurking beneath the waves. World War I was raging when the Cyclops left Barbados, bound for Baltimore on what should have been a routine run. Her captain, George Worley, was a seasoned mariner, though his temperament raised eyebrows. Crew members described him as erratic, even paranoid, with a habit of confining sailors to quarters for minor infractions. Some wondered if his behavior masked something darker, a secret mission perhaps, or a hidden threat aboard. The ship's final radio transmission gave no hint of trouble, just a weather report and an estimated arrival time. Then nothing. When the Navy launched its search, even the usual breadcrumbs, oil slicks, life jackets, floating wreckage were absent. It was as if the Cyclops had been plucked from the ocean's surface by an unseen hand. Theories erupted like depth charges. Some pointed to German U-boats, though naval records showed no submarine activity in the area. Others suspected the manganese ore a volatile cargo that could shift suddenly, destabilizing the ship in heavy seas. But the most chilling claims came from survivors of other vessels in the region. Sailors spoke of phosphorescent water glowing unnaturally bright that March, as if the sea itself were burning from below. One merchant captain's log described a column of white flame shooting from the horizon the night the Cyclops disappeared, a phenomenon with no clear explanation even a century later. Then there's the spy angle. Declassified documents reveal that the Cyclops' route took her perilously close to waters where German operatives were known to sabotage Allied supply lines. A coded British intelligence memo from 1917 warns of infiltrators among collier crews, raising the specter of a planted bomb or a hijacking gone wrong. Could Worley have uncovered a traitor, triggering a deadly confrontation? Or was the ship's disappearance a deliberate act of war covered up to avoid panic? The Navy's own investigation called the loss one of the most baffling mysteries in the annals of the sea, a rare admission of defeat from an institution built on answers. Modern sonar scans have only deepened the riddle. Expeditions in the 1960s and 2000s identified several large wrecks near the Cyclops' last known coordinates, but none match her distinctive profile. The manganese ore complicates things further. If the ship imploded under pressure, her remains could be scattered across the seafloor like shrapnel. Yet the absence of definitive wreckage feeds the whispers. Some say the Cyclops didn't sink at all, that she drifted into a fog bank and slipped through some unseen rift, becoming a ghost ship condemned to sail the Triangle forever. What makes this disappearance endure isn't just the scale of the loss. It's the way the Cyclops straddles history and myth, a collision of wartime intrigue and maritime folklore. Every detail, the phosphorescent water, the missing logs, Worley's paranoia feels like a puzzle piece that refuses to fit. The ocean offers no closure, just a century of silence and the creeping suspicion that some truths are too dangerous to surface. The Cyclops didn't just vanish. She became a warning, written in waves and whispers. The sea keeps what it takes. The MV Joyita was supposed to be an unremarkable workhorse of the South Pacific, a sturdy, 80-foot wooden vessel ferrying supplies between remote islands. But on October 3, 1955, this humble ship cemented its place in maritime infamy when it was found drifting off Fiji's coast, its decks eerily empty, its life rafts missing, and its hull stained with streaks of dried blood. The scene was so unsettling that investigators dubbed it the Mary Celeste of the South Pacific, a ghost ship whose secrets seemed to bleed from its very planks. What made the discovery so chilling wasn't just the absence of the 25 crew and passengers, it was the state of the Joyita itself. The ship's engines were still running, albeit weakly, as if abandoned mid-voyage. A doctor's bag lay open on the deck, its bandages unfurled and splattered with blood. The radio, though set to the international distress frequency, had been tampered with, its wiring frayed and disconnected. Most unsettling of all, the ship's logbook, compass, and firearms were all missing, as if someone had deliberately erased evidence of what happened. The Joyita wasn't just abandoned, it was a crime scene without victims, a puzzle without clues. Theories swirled like the currents that carried the derelict ship. Some pointed to the Joyita's notorious instability. Its hull had been reinforced with cork and concrete, making it prone to listing in rough seas. Survivors of similar vessels described how sudden rolls could send unsecured cargo crashing, injuring crew or even knocking them overboard. But that didn't explain the blood or why no one had radioed for help. Others whispered of piracy, citing the missing weapons and the fact that the Joyita had been carrying a small fortune in medical supplies and cash. Yet there were no signs of forced entry, no bullet holes, no struggle beyond those cryptic stains. Then came the meteorological angle. The Joyita had sailed straight into a squall notorious for rogue waves, walls of water tall enough to smash windows or sweep entire decks clean. One survivor of a nearby ship recounted how a single wave could spin a vessel like a top, leaving crews disoriented and panicked. Had the Joyita's passengers, fearing a capsize, fled into life rafts only to be swallowed by the storm? It was plausible except for one glaring hole. The life rafts themselves were designed to stay afloat indefinitely. If they'd been launched, why were none ever found? The most haunting theory emerged from the Solomon Islands, where locals spoke of papa boats, phantom vessels crewed by restless spirits. Fishermen claimed to have seen the Joyita's silhouette on moonless nights, its decks crawling with shadowy figures. Skeptics dismissed it as superstition, but even hard-nosed investigators couldn't ignore the eerie parallels. One crewman's journal, recovered from his abandoned quarters, contained a hastily scribbled entry there in the walls. Whether he meant rats, water, or something more sinister remains a mystery. Decades later, the Joyita's wreck still refuses to talk. Expeditions in the 1990s found the ship's hull half buried in silt, its interior too decayed to yield answers. The blood stains faded into the wood, their origins as ambiguous as ever. The missing logbook likely disintegrated, taking its secrets to the deep. What lingers isn't evidence, but the weight of those unanswered questions. A ship doesn't just empty itself. Blood doesn't stain decks without cause. And 25 people don't vanish into thin air unless the ocean decides they were never meant to be found. The Joyita's fate isn't just a mystery. It's a mirror held up to the sea's unfathomable indifference, reflecting back our own dread of the depths. The SS Marine Sulphur Queen should have been unremarkable, a converted World War II tanker tasked with hauling molten sulfur from Texas to Virginia. But on February 2, 1963, this unassuming vessel sailed into infamy when it vanished without a trace near the Florida Straits, taking 39 crew members with it. The Coast Guard's initial search found only a few life preservers and a single cryptic shard of debris, a piece of the ship's nameplate bobbing alone in the Gulf Stream. What followed wasn't just a mystery, it was a wake-up call that exposed lethal flaws in an entire industry. At first glance, the Sulphur Queen's fate seemed like just another Bermuda Triangle oddity. But investigators quickly zeroed in on something far more sinister: the ship's hull. Originally designed to carry oil, the vessel had been hastily retrofitted to transport molten sulfur, a cargo that required massive internal tanks heated to nearly 300 degrees Fahrenheit. These modifications turned the ship into a floating pressure cooker, with steel plates weakened by constant thermal expansion and corrosive sulfur gases eating away at weld seams. Former crew members had reported ominous cracks spiderwebbing across bulkheads, some wide enough to slip a hand through. One oiler even testified that the hull groaned like a dying animal in heavy seas, a detail brushed off by owners eager to keep profits flowing. The Coast Guard's final report read like an indictment. Hull stress fractures exacerbated by the ship's brittle post-conversion framework likely triggered a catastrophic structural failure. Imagine the scenario: one critical weld gives way under the strain, allowing superheated sulfur to flood the lower decks. Within minutes, the hull buckles inward like a crushed soda can, dragging the ship under before a single distress signal can be sent. It was a death trap disguised as a merchant vessel, and the tragedy forced maritime regulators to confront a brutal truth. The Sulphur Queen wasn't an anomaly. It was a symptom of an era where cost-cutting trumped safety, where rusting hulls were patched with optimism instead of steel. In the wake of the disaster, new regulations cracked down on converted tankers, mandating rigorous stress testing and thermal shielding for sulfur carriers. The Coast Guard's investigative arm gained unprecedented authority to ground unsafe ships, a power wielded ruthlessly in the years that followed. But the reforms came too late for the Sulphur Queen's crew, whose fate remains etched in the ocean's ledger. Decades later, divers scanning the seabed near the last known coordinates reported sonar shadows matching a shattered hull, but the currents there are merciless, scattering debris across miles of abyss. The sea, as always, keeps its secrets close, even as its lessons echo in every weld inspection and safety audit born from this tragedy. Some ships don't just vanish, they force the world to change. The ocean's appetite for swallowing ships whole didn't end with the age of sail, it merely evolved. Two modern cases, separated by nearly 40 years, prove that even with GPS, satellite phones, and advanced weather tracking, the sea can still turn yachts into ghost ships with chilling efficiency. The Teignmouth Electron and the Kazroman II, both found drifting with meals half-eaten and engines humming, share eerie similarities, yet their disappearances reveal starkly different truths about what waits beyond the horizon when human ambition meets the ocean's indifference. First, the Teignmouth Electron, a 40-foot trimaran that should have been a symbol of triumph. In 1969, it was competing in the Sunday Times Golden Globe race, a solo circumnavigation challenge, when rescuers spotted it adrift in the mid-Atlantic. Its lone sailor, Donald Crowhurst, was gone. The cabin told a story of unraveling sanity logbooks filled with delusional calculations, fake coordinates, and a final, rambling confession. Crowhurst, it seemed, had faked his progress to avoid the shame of failure, then leaped overboard when the lie became unbearable. But the ocean had one more cruelty in store. Currents carried the empty yacht for weeks, its paint blistering under the sun, turning Crowhurst's personal tragedy into a maritime cautionary tale. The Teignmouth Electron wasn't claimed by waves. It was a victim of the human mind's fragility when pressed between isolation and the sea's infinite void. Fast forward to 2007, and the Kazroman II, nicknamed the Ghost Catamaran, paints a far more enigmatic picture. Found off Australia's Great Barrier Reef with its sails up, laptop open, and coffee cup still warm, this modern yacht seemed frozen in time. The three men aboard vanished, no distress call, no life rafts deployed, just a tableau of interrupted routine that defied explanation. Unlike Crowhurst's unraveling, there were no frantic diary entries here, only a chilling normality. The Australian Transport Safety Bureau's report leaned toward a rogue wave or sudden squall sweeping the crew overboard, but skeptics seized on odd details. The engine was idling, the table was set for a meal never eaten. Even the Kazroman II Epiob distress beacon remained untouched, as if whatever happened struck too fast for reaction. Rogue waves, once dismissed as sailors' lore, now offer the most plausible explanation. Satellite data confirms these walls of water, some towering 100 feet, can emerge from calm seas with no warning. In 2004, the European Space Agency recorded a wave near Scotland measuring 95 feet, rewriting oceanography textbooks. The Kazroman II, with its low freeboard and open deck, would have been a matchstick in such a surge. But the Teignmouth Electron's fate reminds us that not all disappearances stem from nature's wrath. Human error, desperation, and the psychological toll of the sea's vastness can be just as deadly. The contrast between these cases lingers like salt in the air. Crowhurst's yacht became a mirror for his unraveling mind, every scratch in the logbook a testament to solitude's weight. The Cas Roman II, meanwhile, is a snapshot of the sea's caprice, a reminder that no matter how advanced our technology, the ocean can erase lives in the time it takes to sip coffee. Both vessels now rust in obscurity, their empty hulls whispering the same warning. The sea doesn't need monsters or myths to claim its victims. Sometimes all it takes is a single wave or a single moment of despair to turn a ship into a ghost. The scene aboard the Cas Roman II wasn't just mysterious, it was unnervingly mundane. When Australian authorities boarded the catamaran in April 2007, they found a tableau straight out of a Twilight Zone. A laptop open and humming on the chart table, its screen frozen on a weather report. Plates of food sat half-eaten in the galley, forks still resting on the rims. Coffee cups waited beside a pot, their contents long evaporated but their placement suggesting an interrupted breakfast. Even the engine idled quietly, as if the crew had simply stepped away for a moment. But the three men who'd set sail from early beach days earlier, experienced sailors all, were nowhere to be found. Piracy theories crumbled under scrutiny. The Cas Roman II valuables, wallets, phones, even a digital camera, lay untouched in plain sight. No signs of struggle marred the decks or cabin. The sails billowed intact, their ropes neatly coiled, dismissing any notion of a hasty escape. Even the life jackets remained stowed, their straps still clipped. This wasn't the work of thieves or kidnappers. The ocean had taken the crew but left their lives frozen in eerie perfection, like a ship trapped in amber. Experts turned to the sea itself for answers. The Cas Roman II's last known position, near the outer edge of the Great Barrier Reef, placed it in waters notorious for sudden squalls and rogue waves. Satellite data later confirmed an unexpected weather front had barreled through the area that morning, its winds strong enough to knock a man overboard but brief enough to leave no lasting damage to the yacht. One hypothesis suggests the men were caught off guard while on deck, perhaps adjusting sails or securing gear, when a single towering wave swept them into the brine. The catamaran's low railings would have offered little protection, and with no one left to throttle the engine or send a distress call, the Cas Roman II simply drifted on, its automation preserving the moment of disaster like a macabre time capsule. But the untouched Epiob distress beacon nags at investigators. Even in a panic, seasoned sailors would have triggered it. This detail fuels darker speculation. A carbon monoxide leak from the generator, silently incapacitating the crew before they could react. Yet no gas detectors were aboard to confirm the theory, and without bodies or a black box, the truth remains as elusive as the men themselves. The Cas Roman II fate stands as a stark reminder that even in our age of satellite navigation and instant communication, the sea can still erase lives in the blink of an eye, leaving behind only questions and a table set for a meal no one will ever finish. 25 vanished ships, each swallowed by the sea under circumstances so baffling they've lingered in history like unhealed wounds. From the Mahogany Ship's dunes to the Cyclops' wartime silence, these disappearances share chilling patterns, threads woven through time that tug at our curiosity. Navigation errors plague them all, whether it's Roman galleys misreading Germanic coasts, Zhenghi's auxiliary fleet straying into Sumatran squalls, or the USS Insurgent's compass spinning wildly off St. Kitts. The ocean is a liar, distorting horizons and bending magnetic fields, and even the most seasoned captains weren't immune to its deceptions. Then there's the weather, nature's ruthless equalizer. The Waratah's rogue wave, the Teignmouth electron's psychological tempests, the Cas Roman II freak gust, all reminders that the sea doesn't need malice to kill. It simply exhales and ships cease to be. But perhaps the most insidious thread is the cover-ups. empires scrubbing records to hide incompetence, like Ming officials erasing their vanished treasure fleet, or the Royal Navy downplaying the Wasp's fate to save face. History, it seems, is written by those who stay afloat. Yet here's what haunts me. In an age of sonar and satellites, could one of these mysteries still crack open? Imagine a storm shifting the sands off Warrnambool, finally exposing the Mahogany Ship's hull, or a deep-sea rover stumbling upon La Pérouse's logbook preserved in some abyssal crevice. Which disappearance do you think still holds answers? Could the Bermuda Triangle surrender the Cyclops, or will the Sulphur Queen's wreckage emerge from the Gulf Stream's grip? The ocean keeps its secrets close, but not forever. Drop your theories below. After all, the next wave might just bring a clue.